could also be heavily redacted as this one is.
I want all of you to stick around, and I want to bring in Congressman Ted Lieu of California, member of the House Judiciary Committee. Congressman, I don't know if you've been able to see this document, but what I do want to talk to you is this. This is a document that is a cooperating witness, someone who has met 19 times and given truthful information according to the special counsel's office. There are other people who are not cooperating. Roger Stone is one of them. Roger Stone today pleading the fifth kind of out of nowhere in response to a request from Dianne Feinstein in the Senate Judiciary. What do you make of that, and what do you think that signals about the president's manipulation or influence on potential witnesses?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Let me first say I have two takeaways from the Flynn sentencing memo. The first is I believe Robert Mueller is signaling to other defendants and potential defendants that if you cooperate with the special counsel's office, they will work with you and they will be lenient. In this case, recommending no prison time is extremely lenient. And second, I believe Robert Mueller feels his job is secure. Otherwise, I think he would have laid out a lot more. I believe that he believes that his job is secure. That's why he's not detailing very much information. And now when you turn to Roger Stone...
Wait, stop right there, if you don't mind, Congressman. Elaborate on that. What do you mean by that? To Dan's point about needing to essentially publicly justify the continued inquiry?
That's correct. If Robert Mueller thought that he was going to get fired, I think he would have laid out a very lengthy sentencing memo detailing the several ongoing investigations and what Michael Flynn may have said about those investigations. He didn't do that. He largely blacked out most of that information, and that tells me that Robert Mueller is continuing with these investigations. He doesn't want to reveal any information he doesn't have to because he believes he will still remain on the job and see the investigations through their completion.
All right. Now, that question, Roger Stone, because it relates to Michael Flynn, who's a cooperating witness, the president essentially tweeting the other day sort of transparently about the weak snitch that rolled over on him and the strong and gutsy Roger Stone who's staying strong. And Roger Stone then sort of almost as if on cue with this bizarre declaration, he's pleading the fifth rather than turn over some documents to the Senate.
So as a former prosecutor, I can tell you that every person has their absolute right to invoke the Fifth Amendment in legal proceedings. But you can also waive that right if you talk about the very issues upon which you're asserting your Fifth Amendment protection. And in this case, Roger Stone went on numerous public appearances, talked about Russia, talked about WikiLeaks, denied his own culpability. I believe a good case can be made that he has waived his Fifth Amendment rights. And in addition, the Fifth Amendment generally protects against testimony, not against documents. So I think he still has produce a lot of these documents as well.
It's also weird because it's a request from the minority. It's not an actual subpoena. It does seem more like Roger Stone performing a certain kind of recalcitrance for perhaps an audience of one at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Glenn, let me ask you this because the congressman just mentioned this. Hanging over this, of course, is the context of the fact that we have an acting attorney general of the United States, Mr. Whitaker, who is, I think, in a very strange position. He is the subject of, if I'm not mistaken, 4 lawsuits that say he is not the rightful Attorney General of the United States. He is unprecedented in being elevated to that position and for serving as long as he has. And there's concern that he's put there essentially as a crony to either spy on, squeeze, or terminate the Mueller investigation. Are there any conclusions you can draw from what Congressman Lieu was saying, what Dan Goldman was saying about that?
I very much like Congressman Lieu's take on this, that it's an indication that Bob Mueller believes his job is secure. I will say, Chris, that I in part learned how to be a federal prosecutor from working with Bob Mueller shoulder to shoulder for 2 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. I think Bob Mueller is not even impacted by all the white noise going on around him with respect to the appointment of Whitaker. It may impact who he is briefing day to day. I don't know that we're entirely sure that Acting Attorney General Whitaker is involved, as opposed to Mr. Rosenstein, in the day-to-day supervision. But I think Bob Mueller keeps his head down, keeps his team focused, ignores the white noise, and continues to move forward in the way he thinks best.
Ben Wittes is still with us. And Ben, I haven't gotten a chance to your reaction to this document, which I imagine you've gotten a chance to read. What do you think?
Well, it's a bit of a snoozer from a substantive point of view. In terms
Ben, I got
of
a cable news show to run here, buddy.
Yeah, but you didn't let me get to the butt in the sentence.
Okay, please.
But what is in there is really significant. So with the other, guys who Mueller has filed sentencing memos around. There's a whole lot of stuff about how, George Papadopoulos didn't cooperate, didn't provide substantial assistance. We're going to get a memo at the end of the week about how Manafort breached the agreement. Here, there's none of that. He provided substantial assistance. He met with us a lot of times. He's, and the subtext of that is we got from him what we need. And we are getting from him the cooperation that we need. And that means Bob Mueller is saying, at least as regards this guy, the investigation is completely on track. I'm not telling you where it's going today. I'm not telling you what we've actually figured out, but I'm telling you everything we need from this guy, we got. And that's a big deal.
And we should note, Ben, as you say that, Ken, Michael Flynn's son, who's fairly public, has been striking a lot of anti-Mueller notes. He tweets about the deep state. There are reasons to think that maybe Michael Flynn would go down the road of George Papadopoulos, who's tried to sort of extract himself from his plea deal and basically says he was set up now. Manafort, who cooperated and didn't cooperate well. To Ben's point, despite that public profile, particularly people close to Flynn, casting some aspersions on this enterprise, what this document says that in what he was doing in that room, he has been cooperating.
I think he's got a very good lawyer who's not very sympathetic to Donald Trump, for one thing. I think when he made his he made a statement about cooperating. Remember, it was a very contrite statement. He said it was time to do the right thing for his family and get on the right side of history, something to that effect. So I think he's not in the place of Manafort or Papadopoulos or even his son. I just want to go back one thing. Whitaker, we've been reporting, I don't think it's broken through. Nicole Wallace first reported that Matthew Whitaker is not in day-to-day charge of this investigation. Rod Rosenstein is still making the day-to-day supervisory decisions to the extent that there are any. The Justice Department has not pushed back on that. What they have said is that Whitaker hasn't recused, he's nominally in charge, but I don't think he wants any part of this.
Right. I mean, that's sort of no end. By the way, we have no idea what's redacted here, right? I mean, it's redacted for a reason.
We don't know the substance of it, but all we can see is how much of the information is actually redacted. And ordinarily but I mean, how many pages it is. And ordinarily in these types of memos, when I've written many of them, you don't go into pages and pages of detail. It doesn't read like an indictment. It is a sort of conclusory, summary fashion explanation as to what kind of information they've provided, against whom, maybe why it's relevant, why it's important. But this, to me, reads like pretty significant information that, of course, because it's redacted, we don't know, and that is intentional. So there's a lot here that Mueller has and is dealing with, a lot of evidence, a lot of testimony from Michael Flynn that we don't know, and that is important for the investigation.
Congressman, we've been talking about Whitaker, obviously, and if I'm not mistaken, you sit on the Judiciary Committee, right?
That's correct.
Good, phew. And you will obviously be in the majority very soon. You will have the ability to bring him before Congress. He has been mum on a whole bunch of questions, including these important ones, like what his involvement is. For instance, did he see this document before it was filed? Does he know what's redacted? How much does he know? Are those questions you would like the answer to?
Absolutely, and we get subpoena power starting January 3rd. But let me just say about Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, I believe his appointment right now is not constitutional. He was not confirmed by the Senate, and if this is allowed to stand, you can imagine future presidents simply getting someone through the Senate confirmation process that they know will be confirmed, getting that person fired a few months later, and then installing their preferred employee. This can't be allowed to happen, so we'll certainly ask Attorney General Whitaker about that. And then my last takeaway from this memo I think is important is the memo doesn't say there were just 2 investigations. It says several, one of which is a collusion investigation, one's a criminal investigation, and one is totally blacked out. We have no idea what that investigation is.
Yeah, great point here, Barbara. Barbara McQuaid, the first thing is there are 2 investigations. B is the Special Counsel Office's investigation. We know what that is. But A is this. It's the criminal investigation. The